Hello and welcome to Advent Adventures. Today is Saturday, December 4th, in the first week of Advent. Today our Advent journey takes us to that point in the Gospel of Matthew where Jesus looks at these crowds that keep coming to him. And his heart is moved with pity. He has compassion for them because he recognizes in them their desire for something more. Yes, some of them come because they want to be healed, but most of them come because they want to hear what he has to say. They want to hear about the compassion of God. They want to hear about the love of God for them, because most of the people who come are not the great or the famous, but the little ones and the ones who feel forgotten and lost. And they come, and Jesus recognizes in them, he says, they are like the lost sheep of the house of Israel. These are the ones who hunger and thirst for God, who hunger and thirst for God's holiness, God's life, God's love. And so he preaches to them. He shares with them the good news. But most of all, what he reveals to them is not what he says, but the mercy and the compassion that he has, not just for them, but for us all. And it echoes what we hear in that first reading today from the book of the prophet Isaiah, where Isaiah says, you know, you will see your teacher, and your teacher will speak to you and guide you along the path. And that's who we meet in Jesus, is this teacher. But the interesting thing about the gospel today is at the end, Jesus says, you know, there are so many out there that need this. There are so many people who feel lost or forgotten or neglected. And so he sends out his apostles, his disciples, and says, go and reach out to them. Look for the lost. Look for the ones who feel forsaken or forgotten. Reach out to them and share the good news with them. Bring them the hope and the promise that it offers. And while we aren't like the 12, we are the Lord's disciples. And, you know, we're sent out too. You and I are all sent out to be signs of his love, his compassion, and mercy. And so maybe on this first Saturday in Advent, its first week, we can think of maybe someone who might feel a bit lost or neglected or forgotten, and reach out to them. Not necessarily to talk about Jesus, but to just be a sign of God's compassion, mercy, God's kindness to them. To reach out to them and to be the good news for them in a way that helps them come to know that God has loved them and will always love them. That's the invitation extended to us this first week of Advent, to seek out the lost and to draw them into the circle of the Lord's love. Have a great Advent and a wonderful Christmas.